I'm going to read the post from February 15th, 2015, called The Faculty of Abraxas. And I don't know. I wrote about this, obviously, because I was interested in, rooting it out more and figuring out what it meant to the people who referred to it, because if you Google it under books.google.com, there's a lot of references to the faculty of Abrax or the faculty of Abraxas in these Masonic books. And of course, Gerald Massey references it just real quick in Volume 2 of The Natural Genesis. And another way of they said, or they put it, was the way of winning the faculty of Abraxas or Abrax. And so I was like, well, what is that exactly? And I think obviously the key to it is the whole denotation of Abraxas as 365, and so therefore it's like the days and the time, the knowledge of the times, and the timings and the the magical calendar. But it's kind of a little deeper. The word abracadabra obviously is also tied in with this, which is a sort of talisman for health or protection, which had abracadabra basically ascending or descending. And so there's that cone of power idea, and it's like a magical square, but more like a magical triangle. In the Leland manuscript, it is said that the Masons conceal the way of winning the faculty of Abrax. Mr. Locke, if it was he who wrote a commentary on the manuscript, says, "Here I am utterly in the dark. It means simply the way of acquiring the science of Abrax. The science of Abrax is the knowledge of the power and the use of the mystical Abraxas," which, Abraxas, or very likely, Abrax is merely an abbreviation of abracadabra. Abracadabra, a term of incantation which was formerly worn about the neck as an amulet against several diseases, especially the Persian egg. It was to be written on a triangular piece of parchment in the following form. It is said that it first occurs in the Carmen de Morbis et Remedies of Q. Serenus Simonicus, a favorite of the Emperor Severus in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, and is generally supposed to be derived from the word Abraxas. Abraxas, Basilides, the head of the Egyptian sect of Gnostics, taught that there were 7 emanations or eons from the supreme God, that these angels formed a heaven for their habitation and brought forth other angels of a nature inferior to their own, that in time other heavens were formed and other angels created, until the whole number of angels in their respective heavens amounted to 365, which were thus equal to the number of days in a year, and finally, that over all these an omnipotent Lord, inferior, however, to the supreme God, presided, whose name was Abraxas. Now this word, Abraxas, in the numerical force of its letters when written in Greek, amounts to 365. Thus, Alpha 1, Beta 2, Rho 100, Alpha 1, Chi 60, Alpha 1, Sigma 200 equals 365. The god Abraxas was therefore a type or symbol of the year or of the revolution of the earth around the sun. This mystical reference of the name of a god to the annual period was familiar to the ancients and is to be found in at least 2 other instances. Thus, among the Persians, the letters of the name of the god Mithras and of Belinus or Belinus among the Gauls amounted each to 365. The word Abraxas, therefore, from this mystical value of the letters of which it was composed, became talismanic, and was frequently inscribed, sometimes with and sometimes without other superstitious inscriptions, on stones or gems as amulets, many of which have been preserved or are continually being discovered, and are to be found in the cabinets of the curious. There have been many conjectures among the learned as to the derivation of the word Abraxas. Beausobre in Histoire du Monachisme, Volume 2, derives it from the Greek absos seo, signifying the magnificent Savior, he who heals and preserves. Bellarmine, in Essay on the Gems of the Ancients, supposed it to be confounded of the 3 Coptic words signifying the holy word of bliss. Pignorius and Vandalin think it is composed of 4 Hebrew and 3 Greek letters, whose numerical value is 365, and which are the initials of the sentence, saving men by wood, i.e. the cross. And Abraxas stones, the stones on which the word Abraxas and other devices are engraved, and which were used by the Egyptian Gnostics as amulets. So, that's one. Obviously, that's mainly just about Abraxas, but the faculty of Abraxas, again, kind of connects with the lost word. It implies Gematria. The possession of the faculty of Abrax in the old Masonic documents refers to this and means an acquaintance with the mystical knowledge and the powers belonging to the divine name under the form of the word Abraxas, which furnishes at the same time another and curious link in the history of the transmission of the mysterious or omnific, ineffable, or sacred word. It is known by all these names, and thereby exists the union of the double line of Hebraic tradition and Egyptian speculation in the new school of Christian Gnostic theology. One by one, the various sects which made the omnific name the center of speculation pass out of notice as separate theological schools. Not so, however, with the impulse of the inference itself, as we find it amplified into a system more elaborate and complete than any upon the same theme which had ever existed, not now as a sect, but as a scheme of thought, making a common ground for thinkers from the most different schools of the then prevailing religions. This is the system known as the Kabbalah, and was the accepted theological philosophy of many of the most distinguished of the reformers of a later date, with many holders of it among Romanists, and widely accepted as the current biblical interpretation of Jewish scholars of the period, as it had been for centuries before. It is these speculations of the Kabbalah in which the traditions of former ages have come to us under the forms in which we as Masons, especially in the chapter degrees, are wont to receive them. The points of identity are so many, so various, and so essential in the very structure of our order, that it is plain that in some period of their history the associations of the great builders of Western Asia, which passed later into the Masonic guilds of Latin and Teutonic Europe, had made or found the mystery of the omnific word an integral part of their secret science, and that this, which in one of their old documents is called the faculty of Abrax, under substantially the same form as in the Kabbalah, has been preserved and still remains as an essential part of the traditions and symbols of the Masonic order under its different degrees. The word Kabbalah indicates the mode in which the doctrines were for centuries conveyed. It is Hebraic and means received because received and handed down the centuries by oral tradition. The exoteric part of the doctrine was committed to writing in many books, not later than the 14th century. Some put them 600 years earlier, all admitting, however, that the substance of the teaching had been existing as oral tradition long centuries before the earliest of these dates. The chief book was called the Zohar, or Light, or Splendor, the Book of Splendor, or by an earlier exposition, Let There Be Light, because its principal theme was the divine light, and its expression in the divine words of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 3, and in their conception, the supreme origin of the universe was a being, boundless, nameless, and whose nature was infinite light. And it's even referred to in Aleister Crowley and the Ouija Board by J. Edward Cornelius, a more recent book, but not to too huge of a depth. The faculty of Abrax refers to an ability that allows individuals to obtain hidden knowledge or gnosis with the spirit world and with angels, i.e. basically intelligences and angles literally are perceptions of projections, which is what reality is, projections of various spectrums and continuums and happenings. And so basically with the geometrical blueprinting ability, you can pretty much decode these sort of potentials. In particular, it refers to the specific entities that descend through our sun, which, according to the ancient Christian Gnostics, is ruled by the god Abraxas. Alright, so here it kind of goes into a little more depth. But they conceal the art of keeping secrets, and so the world may conceal nothing from them. They conceal the art of working wonders and foreseeing things to come, that so the same arts may not be used by the wicked to an evil end. They also conceal the art of changes, the key to the secrets of nature, the way of gaining the faculty of Abraxas, or the skill of becoming good and perfect without the aid of hope and fear, and the universal language of Masons. So this part about the without the aid of hope and fear, that stood out to me when I went to go reopen this post and read it and brush up on what they say about the faculty of Abraxas. I figured I'll just read it aloud. But so I've been looking for evidence, first of all, for a long time of knowledge or an appearance or make any apparent reference to the knowledge of Gematria by Masons, and they do reference it, they know about it, but to me it doesn't seem like they apply it very often, and most people are too resistant to the idea of applying the Hebrew method and the Hebrew phonetics to English. There's too many hang-ups involved in all that for people to, I guess, actually do it. And so a lot of stuff's been unknown. And so it's just funny that they reference this so far back ago, it's oh, here you go. But they don't use it. Anyway, I've applied it to a lot of things, and oh shit. It's not just the triple numbers, and it's definitely not just 666 that people should focus on, but the triple numbers, and especially 666, do have a lot of data. 365 does too, and so does every fucking number pretty much. But then how they interact into the triple numbers is still mind-boggling, to me. Anyway, this is The Universe by Sun Guy, and it obviously veils the IAO and just the basic fundamentals. The entire eighth, my son, and the souls that are in it, and the angels, sing a hymn in silence. That's from the Ogdoad and the Ennead, or on the discourse, or the eighth reveals the ninth. Yeah, the discourse on the eighth and the ninth refers to an ancient document, one of 3 Hermetic texts of the mostly Gnostic Nag Hammadi findings. It is the 30th tractate in the library at large, the 6th in Codex 6. Insufficient information has survived from the manuscript to reconstruct the title. Alternatives include the 8th reveals the 9th from the text itself, Discourse on the 8th and 9th from J.M. Robinson, or the Ogdoad and the Ennead. Dated to a period possibly of the 2nd century CE, D.M. Parrott in 1988, it is a reasoned assumption that the textual information found written in Coptic had been translated from a Greek original. Those who walk the golden path know from experience that it is one of great illumination and propels one through a course of initiations that simply cannot be fully expressed to one who has not broken ground within themselves enough to appreciate the higher and subsequently deeper levels of being we become attuned to and aware of through ritual work, reading, communicating, and experimenting. Beginning to get on the path is one of the most difficult stages, and environmental factors play a major role in that as well. and social and monetary, financial, blah, blah, blah. There are many different ways to ignite the black flame within, ranging from art to music, plants, sensory derangement. These all may serve as a switch which affects the regular mode of operation, allowing one to analyze both the familiar mode and the new mode, or perspective. The goal being to obtain a higher gnosis or profound view of the mundane mind and its habituated instinct of identifying only with that which one sees with their eyes, and opening the ego up to the range known as the higher mind, technically also including the subconscious or the lower mind, which on the Tree of Life is Yesod, the moon, but also the whole other side of the tree in general as well. Over time, usually the period of many years, and with much effort in gaining knowledge from various sources and working with it, a second knowledge is developed. A knowledge not based merely on action and reaction and cause and effect of factors in the microcosm, but the actions and reactions of causes and effects that span over the course of long spans of time, and the impulses behind them in which they carry. There are many times in our lives when we feel a profound sense of belonging, like we are at the right place at the right time, as opposed to those times where we really know we're at the wrong place in the wrong time, in that everything in the universe must have been right on track for some fateful event to have happened in the particular way it did. Deja vu itself is like a magnified form of this, in that it is like we are realizing or reawakening to the path that we seem to have passed through before, or precognized, in that, with the whole dream and all that, like when you're dreaming, the connections, the flows, the mind, it's like less inertia, whereas the waking mind is like depends on inertia. And so I think that's why deja vu, it's a very like dreamlike, almost like inertialess, like you're just in that time, like in the fucking, how do I explain it? You're caught in the fucking web. And that's like the 333 thing. You wake up at 333 and it's like, oh, what the fuck? Feels very mechanical. The mechanicalness of reality, or of the self, of being. And so, yeah, there are going to be patterns and webs and laws, and it's just the way it is. And so it's like you better start working with them rather than against them, because you're not going to be able to, fight nature. Archetypal patterns are the fractal templates in and of themselves which carry on along the spiral currents of manifestation. And sometimes our waking mind receives flashes of this pattern which reduces like a net infinitely great or infinitely small. This net is that which the Egyptian initiates would master through their various practices. And this is the same practice that is happening in any Gnostic yoga practice, which seeks to unify as a yolk in an egg, as well as encompass as the cosmic egg itself, and therefore become conscious living embodiments of the two extremes, yin and yang, and the 7 rays, or chakras, or peels, levels between them, which alchemically mutate from light, spirit, into matter, and then spirit and matter unified in balance. The balance is symbolized by Atu 8, and therefore Mayat directly rules the balance of the egg toroid of space-time. The symbol above, which is similar to that of the Ankh, shows the wheel of time, with the T being the cross of directions, past, present, and future, with the wheel being that which is rolling, i.e. the lunisolar stellar interplay of light and shadow, which affects psychic and physical functions. 8, or the infinity, is related to the egg, which has been imploded, that is, opened from the inside rather than the out. The center of the torus has opened, and the egg, which was one universe to its own, has awakened to find but another seemingly infinite universe right outside its shell. The 8, the octave, time, again, the development cycles and all that. That's kind of why the seed being 333, and that being the dream time, but also time stations, time gematria. It's kind of, you can't just like, crack an egg open and have the fully formed, developed chicken. And so you also can't crack the egg open and expect to understand certain things that take time and steps, graduations, initiations, steps along the way and all that. Like, it takes time. And you have to feed it, nurture it. It takes sunlight and chemical processes. And that's why the egg, again, is like this alchemical vessel. The 8 is symbolic of eternity in the figure of woman, again with the hourglass figure, and the Ankh is that of the eternal life in the figure of man. The figurative serpent who put enmity between them is the spiral of time at the center of the garden. The center of the circle being figured as 359, Satan, one less than the full circle, which opens the gate of the Qliphoth, creating the movement of the revolution of light signified by the 7 eons or rays, the 8th being the great ray of time, Chronos or Abraxas, and the 9th being that of the distinction in solidarity or homogenization, to reopen on a higher level in 10, Malkuth, the material plane. And so that's a very hard thing to understand, or let alone put into words. Basically, I see it as an unfolding or birthing process, and that's kind of what the 8th eon symbolizes. And the 8th and the 9th, the interplay of those. 8 and 9 obviously is 17. The 17th Kala being the supreme Kala that arises from the 16 over time. Again, this sort of like lunar activation of the elements into solar consciousness, or just life. And of course, you've got the galaxies and cell division and the toroid, the time cone. The hexagram is symbolic of the union of opposites, creating the 7th ray, which illumines the 8th, and again, then the 9th and the 10th. And so again, that's this whole Kabbalistic unfoldment, which is kind of like in everything. The cells, galaxies, light. It is the central shining light of gold. Again, the XYZ and this alchemical formula. And final He, again, which is that sort of opening, the birthing process and all that. I guess I should say, which is used in banishing and high magic. Note also that the Hebrew word for this symbol is Magen David, or the Star of David, and thus equivalent to gold in the number 107, gold in the hexagram being, again, solar. And of course reduces to 8, but shows the separation of the 1 from the 7 by the O, or wheel of time. And again, Kenneth Grant talks a lot about how 1 and 7, it's like, but yet it's also Amsu, the risen Horus. So it's pretty much it's just, I don't know, there's all these mythologies tied up in one thing. Like, it's also Adamus. The 8th ray is known in the Gnostic eonology as the super-celestial eon beyond the lower 7 eons, and represents the stepping beyond the fractal net through the path opened through duality and into the timeless astral region of Sophia, Wisdom 369, or Abraxas 365. The faculty of Abraxas, to which this post receives its name, refers to the faculty which is generated over time through understanding and wisdom, Chakma and Bina, to step across the abyss, Doth, of the fractal, or fractals, and tap into the source energy of the matrix itself, and thereby receive the power of the Aenead, a direct line of contact between one's self, microcosm, and the core macrocosm of infinity, in the center of the circle, which is the heart, sun, star center reflected by its own light. So it's kind of like a symbolic reabsorption back into the one light, the light of the one. which is kind of what Buddhism's really all about. And Buddha at the base of the tree is, kind of Kabbalistic itself. Plus, Aleister Crowley, I always thought this was funny. Aleister Crowley is like the Buddha of the West. Aleister Crowley is 22, which is Buddha less than 666. So he's like the bringer of this solar consciousness for the West. There's been a lot of like people who've tried to bring the East to the West, but Crowley's is very it's all this thing about like the faculty of Abraxas. To me, I associate it with the triple numbers of the Kabbalah and the expansion of the levels of the hierarchy. And what is really expanding is this invisible light, the clear light or the black light, which is associated with the zero, and the zero being the field of manifestation, and it all like recycles back like in a toroidal sort of time cone way. And when you look at these fucking Gematrias and stuff, it's all like, it helps to learn the mechanics of the hyperdimensional matrix. But anyway, the faculty of Abraxas, to which this post receives its name, refers to the faculty which is generated over time through understanding and wisdom, blah, blah, blah. The triple extension of 8 as 888 or 888 is the number of Isus or Jesus in Greek, the carrier of the cosmic Christ force of Chrysos or gold, and Chrysos is also 107, the gold light of spirit itself manifested into the fullness of infinity, fit neatly into the philosopher's stone, that infinitely subtle but infinitely powerful substance, the Azov, and manifestation with Vav as O, which is the one substance upon which all is but a mutation of the holographic soul. Again, because in the Emerald Tablet, it says everything's part of the one substance, which again is sort of like a Buddhist or Taoist concept, because everything really is a vibration of the one, which projects both inward and outward. It was just recently mentioned by physicists that certain changes in their models show that the universe may be infinite. And I think it's funny because I recently found that 888 is also the eternal Ovum Mundi universe. Ovum Mundi being the egg of the world, or the universe itself. The cosmic egg corresponding to the 888 of It's All in the Egg in English Gematria. The time door plus O, again the being and how it unfolds in all these various magnitudes, is 888, as well as showing that the Ayan or Anya is the door of time vibration, which is merely the projector of the Kalas or Maya. Kala and Maya are both 52, which again is a deck of cards, or the illusion of time. The Lion's Gate, Abraxas being the lion-headed serpent, is also 888. Thus, 888 is the timeless timelines of Abraxas, the encoded Logos language, which stands beyond time, and in a way underlies it. Particularly related to the Gnostic idea of the demiurge, which is associated particularly with the interplay of the 8 and the 9, 89 again being the guff, or place between manifestations, the seventh heaven, is that 888 is itself the Gnostic demiurge, and the demiurge and the eons, and the demiurge intelligence, which is exhibited throughout the fractal cosmos and condensed into the logos of humanity. 666. The tree of life is a fractal in the gold egg, the egg of 107, 888. Being one ray above 777, 888 rules the light world, which is, and it's also, and 777 also has everything to do with sound and cymatics and the geometry of words and the mind itself, therefore, like words of power. When you start decoding like the Tibetan Kabbalah or just like the Tibetan tradition, with the Kabbalah. 777 is kind of also related. Actually, I should back up and say a while ago, before I really got into either Grant or Crowley, I'd gotten this book called Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism by Lama Anagarika Govinda, or Anagarika, I don't know how to pronounce it, Anagarika. Anyway, he talks about, obviously, a lot in that book, but he mentions words of power, which is a phrase also like that comes up a lot in grimoires and the magical tradition. Words of power is also 777, and so that goes with like the whole mantras. Words of and power is 361. So 777 is like obviously associated with Liber 777, and so the correspondence is teachings of the Kabbalah, and broken shells with Shin. So, which is the world of the Qliphoth, the broken shells, makes me think of light and sound. Again, cymatics. Oops. So, equivalent to the Olam HaQliphoth, or world of shells. And I completely forgot what I was about to say, but that's also the flaming sword, and so thus the lightning bolt. It's also the knowledge of the serpent, or the serpent of knowledge in Hebrew. So the lightning and the serpent going back up. But then also, no, it's the Tibetan lightning bolt, I think. The Tibetan lightning. The Tibetan lightning is 666, but yeah, and then bolt is 111. And then it's also like, I had it written down because I need to go add it to the database. Where is it? Oh yeah, it's the Tibetan Buddha. The Teth He He Tibetan with a nun final. And then again, the Buddha, like Aleister Crowley being 644. This is 755. The Tibetan Buddha is 777. The 7 seals of revelation, which again is 777, are the cosmic fractal connections, or connection between the 7 major chakras and the 7 major rays of light, which combine in 888 and condense in 999. The alignment and the story of the all in one and the one in all. Frater Achad's motto, which had the value of 777 in Latin. Notice this is all above 666 and also above the physical once entering into 777. Yeah, basically that's the sound and the geometry underlying the form. Again, geometric emergence is 666 and source code. So technically, that's the whole nature of this, is that all the way up and all the way down, it's kind of holographic. Like there's literally codes within codes, amalgamated codes, and amalgamation is also the amalgamation. It's also very alchemical. And so that's the whole thing. It's like electrical, it's fiery, it's earthy, it's watery. It's Akashi. The light world. The spectrum of the 9 chambers is very dense and only just now beginning to be deciphered and disseminated. No doubt there will be people trying to plagiarize this knowledge, the supreme knowledge, but technically it's not mine anyway. Again, like it's a tradition literally carried or received, so though I do seem to be the only one to have deciphered this particular key and found personal profound revelations prompting me to find more and to present it to what I find as a decaying community. I say community, I'm really talking about the literature, like the book publishing communities and stuff, mainly, because sure, you got the social communities, they'll always be there, but as far as like, not to name any names, but the OTO, like You'd think that they could keep up with this shit, but I mean, I guess, I don't know. I can't really speak for anyone else, but which I think could be greatly refreshed with this very dense but still very telling information. The faculty of Abraxas is mentioned in a few different prominent Masonic works of the 1800s, and along my search for more about it, they each give a little more information. While not referring to Abraxas in particular, Helena Blavatsky discusses the nature of the 8th eon as being related to that which opens beyond time in The Secret Doctrine, Volume 2, page 563. We are reminded in King's Gnostics that the Greek language has but one word for vowel and voice, and this has led the uninitiated to many erroneous interpretations. On the simple knowledge, however, of that well-known fact, a comparison may be attempted, and a flood of light thrown upon several mystic meanings. Thus the word, so often used in the Upanishads and the Puranas, sound and speech, may be collated with the Gnostic vowels and the voices of the thunders and angels in Revelation. The same will be found in Pistis Sophia and other ancient fragments and manuscripts. This was remarked even by the matter-of-fact author of The Gnostics and Their Remains. Through Hippolytus, an early church father, we learn that Marcus, a Pythagorean rather than a Christian Gnostic, and a Kabbalist most certainly, had received in mystic revelation. It is said that Marcus had it revealed unto him that the 7 heavens sounded each one vowel, which all combined together formed a complete doxology. In clearer words, the sound whereof being carried down from these 7 heavens to earth, being the creator and parent of all things that be on earth, see Hippolytus and King's Gnostics, page 200. Translated from the occult phraseology into still plainer language, this would read, the 7-fold logos having differentiated into 7 logoi, or creative potencies, as the vowels, these, the second logos, or sound, created all of earth. And this is to say, it's kind of complicated, but yeah, it's just identifying the fact that matter and elements are essentially spinning wheels of vibration. Assuredly, one who is acquainted with Gnostic literature can hardly help seeing in St. John's Apocalypse a work of the same school of thought. For we find John saying, chapter 10, 3 and 4, 7 thunders uttered their voices, and I was about to write. But I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, seal up those things which the 7 thunders uttered, and write them not. The same injunction is given to Marcus, the same to all other semi and full initiates. Yet the sameness of equivalent expressions used, and of the underlying ideas, always betrays a portion of the mysteries. We must always seek for more than one meaning in every mystery allegorically revealed, especially in those in which the number 7 and its multiplication, 7 by 7, or 49, appear. Now, when the Rabbi Jesus is requested in Pistis Sophia by his disciples to reveal to them the mysteries of the light of thy, or his Father, i.e., of the higher self enlightened by initiation and divine knowledge, Jesus answers, do ye seek after these mysteries? No mystery is more excellent than they which shall bring your souls unto the light of lights, unto the place of truth and goodness, unto the place where there is neither male nor female, neither form in that place but light, everlasting, not to be uttered. Nothing, therefore, is more excellent than the mysteries which ye seek after, saving only the mystery of the 7 vowels and their 49 powers, and their numbers thereof. And no name is more excellent than all these vowels. The 7 fathers and the 49 sons blaze in darkness, but they are the life and light, and the continuation thereof through the great age, says the commentary speaking of the fires. Now it becomes evident that in every esoteric interpretation of exoteric beliefs, expressed in allegorical forms, there was the same underlying idea, the basic number 7, the compound of 3 and 4, preceded by the divine 3, making the perfect number 10. Also, these numbers applied equally to divisions of time, to cosmography, metaphysical and physical, as well as to man and everything else in visible nature. Thus, these 7 vowels, with their 49 powers, are identical with the 3 and the 7 fires of the Hindus and their 49 fires, identical with the numerical mysteries of the Persian Simorgh, identical with those of the Jewish Kabbalists. The latter, dwarfing the numbers, their mode of blinds, made the duration of each successive renewal, what we call in esoteric parlance round, of the 7 renewals of the globe only of 7,000 years, instead of, as is more likely, 7 billion, and assigned to the total duration of the universe 49,000 years only. Compare Chronology of the Brahmins. Now, the secret doctrine furnishes a key which reveals to us, on indisputable grounds of comparative analogy, that Garuda, the allegorical and monstrous half-man and half-bird, the Vahan or vehicle on which Vishnu, who is Kala or time, is shown to ride, is the origin of all other such allegories. He is the Indian phoenix, the emblem of cyclic and periodical time, the man-lion Singha, of whose representations the so-called Gnostic gems are so full. As confessed by King, the great authority on Gnostic antiquities, these Gnostic gems are not the work of the Gnostics, but belong to pre-Christian periods and are the work of magicians. Over the 7 rays of the lion's crown, and corresponding to their points, stand, in many cases, the 7 vowels of the Greek alphabet and Greek characters, testifying to the 7 heavens. This is the solar lion and the emblem of the solar cycle, as Garuda is that of the great cycle, the Mahakalpa, co-eternal with Vishnu, and of course the emblem of the sun and solar cycle. This is shown by the details of the allegory. At his birth, Garuda is mistaken for Agni, the god of fire, on account of his, or Garuda's, dazzling splendor, and called thereupon Gaganaswara, or Lord of the Sky. Again, his being represented as Osiris, and by many heads of allegorical monsters on the Abraxas Gnostic gems, with the head and beak of an eagle or a hawk, solar birds, denotes Garuda's solar and cyclic character. His sun is Jatabu, the cycle of 60,000 years. As well remarked by C.W. King, whatever the primary meaning of the gem with the solar lion and vowels, it was probably imported in its present shape from India, that true fountainhead of Gnostic iconography, in Gnostics and Their Remains, page 218. The mysteries of the 7 Gnostic vowels, uttered by the thunders of St. John, can be unriddled only by the primeval and original occultism of Aryavarta, brought into India by the primeval Brahmins, who had been initiated in Central Asia. And this is the occultism we study and try to explain, as much as is possible in these pages. Our doctrine of 7 races and 7 rounds of life, and evolution around our terrestrial chain of spheres, may be found even in Revelation. When the 7 thunders, or sounds, or vowels, one meaning out of the 7 for each such vowel relating directly to our own earth and its 7 root races in each round, had uttered their voices, but forbidden the seer to write them, and made him seal up those things. What did the angel, standing upon the sea and upon the earth, do? He lifted his hand to heaven, and sware by him that liveth for ever and ever, that there should be time no longer. But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God, of the cycle, should be finished, by 7. Which means, in theosophic phraseology, that when the 7th round is completed, then time will cease. There shall be time no longer. Very naturally, since pralaya shall set in, and there will remain no one on earth to keep a division of time, during that periodical dissolution and arrest of conscious life. The Egyptologist and historian Gerald Massey also gives somewhat similar comments in a relevant vein, showing his own abractic gnosis having studied as wide a frame of references as is necessary to truly gain the necessary inferences and insights to truly appreciate the 365, or worldwide daily powers as they manifest across the sphere in its multitudinous formats, which apparently some cannot seem to appreciate. 365 equals the tree of life separated and translate. It's also menos, strength or force, from Proto-Indo-European menos, or like manas, mind, from men, to think. Cognates include Avestan mono and Sanskrit manas, as well as Mithras, Abraxas, etc. It is affirmed that our Freemasons conceal, among other secret arts, what they term the faculty of Abrac, which is obviously a reduced form of the word Abraxas, the six-sided stone, of the Abra or Afra, the Canubis sun. The Abraxas stone with 6 sides is the foundation stone of the Masonic degree of the Royal Arch Mason. This stone was fabled to have been brought by Adam out of the lost paradise of a foreworld and was passed on until Solomon used it as the foundation stone for his temple. The seal of Solomon is a double triangle or hexagram, Magen David, looking like a 6-pointed star. It is sometimes called the Shield of David. The Hindu Sri Yantra contains the same figure, which is also found in ancient English churches where the builders have made a Masonic mark. This figure is a symbolic part of the Royal Masonic Arch, and the Seal of Solomon or Shield of David is an extant illustration of the lunar character of David, the Egyptian Tot or Tahuti or Thoth, and of the solilunar origin of Solomon the sun. The double triangle of the sixfold one was also continued in a form of the divine nimbus worn by God the Father, which is represented in a fresco at Mount Athos, and upon an epigenation worn by a great image of St. Nicholas in the chief covenant of Meteora in Thessaly near Tricala. Building the Temple of the Heavens is the great mystery of Masonry, and they retain the chief figures accordingly. The number 5, for example, in which the first planetary heaven was completed, is one of the sacreds. The 5 runs into the 6 in the 5 orders, of what are termed the 6 periods, the grand architects, which expression is used to designate the 6 days of the creation. Their mysteries reveal the same system as mythology. The building of the temple is one of the Masonic mysteries. Masons who know nothing of the mythical, that is, astronomical, origin of these mysteries think this was the temple of an historical Solomon, but the mystic Sen Egyptian, or Brotherhood of Ma, is indefinitely older than the times of the supposed Solomon. Universal symbols found in all forms of the mysteries did not originate with the Jews a few centuries before the present era, besides which the venerable Ma of the Masons is one of the Hebrew Chakma, the personification of wisdom, or Sophia, who acts the part of the builder in creation that Ma does in the creation of Tot and Ptah. Chakma was the founder of the earth, when the heavens were prepared and a circle was set on the face of the deep, and the decree was given that the waters should not pass their appointed limit. Chakma was there. She was the builder from the beginning, who first built the house of the 7 pillars, and therefore, like Ma, can be traced back to the goddess of the 7 stars, the first measurer and maker of a circle in heaven. Chakma denotes the skill of an artificer, but personified, she is the feminine artificer. One mode of creating is described as checking the waters. This, in Egyptian, is kek, to expel, turn back, or check. In the cuneiform description of creation as part of the process, the waters were gathered into one place, where they are yet in the 3 water signs of the zodiac and in the May of the north. The words on the Babylonian tablet are Mi istinish ikik. Mi is waters, mem. Istinish, one place. And ikik answers to the Hebrew chak, a defined and appointed limit. Chit in Phoenician means encompassing. Kiki, Maori, is confined. Kuku, Fiji, to hold. Kiko, Zulu, is the woman's word for a stopper, as we have it in a stopcock. To kag, English, is to bind, limit, or imprison. Kakaya in Sanskrit denotes enclosure, Kacha, shores, Siug, Irish, the circle, Kak, Breton, enclosure, whence the K. One Kek, Egyptian, sign was a collar with 9 beads, which as the collar of Isis signified the 9 months of gestation and breath, or the put circle of the 9 gods. The 9 dry months of the Kek and the inundation, represented by the 3 water signs, made a year, in the figure of which the waters were checked, limited, and confined to the May, the abyss and water girth of the northern quarter. On this, the earth described by the Hebrew writers and Diodorus was founded in the 9 dry signs, the antithesis of the waters. On this abyss of the waters was established the put circle of the 9 gods. The creation of Ptah, who wrote in conjunction with Ma, the Hebrew Chakma, the Masonic Venerable Ma. And again, Ma Bin or May Bin, as in like the Mabinogian. Ma Bin is the mother and the son. And it's the crowned babe. It is the mythical origin alone that affords any solution in such a case as this, where the historical becomes fraudulent. Solomon, the Prince of Peace, was but a form of the solar or lunisolar manifester. The demiurgic Ptah, the architect who built the temple of the heaven in conjunction with Ma, according to one of the particular patterns, of which there were several, stellar, lunar, and solar, has a son who takes the name of Hept, the bringer of peace. This was the Egyptian Solomon, the Ecclesiasticus, or Su, the coming son of the Apocrypha that was brought out of Egypt. He who comes with peace or fulfillment is the Solomon by name. The Egyptian Solomon was the typical builder and designer, the original, i.e. divine modeler of the celestial temple. It is said in an inscription that the temple of Edfu was restored as it is in the book of the model of the temple composed by Prince Hept, eldest son of Tahi. Prince Hept is the prince who comes with peace, and is the Solomon who became the typical architect and healer in Israel. This establishes the link of the god Ptah, the solar architect whose assistants, the 7 Knemu, are the fraternity of the 7 builders of mythology. The sovereignty of Sebek, or Atum Ra, as the 7th, was founded on the 6 previous creations typified by the Abraxas stone, and the fact of the year having been established on those 6 creations in the lunisolar 6 divisions and then completed in 365 days, was conveyed by the faculty of Abraxas in the numbers of the name after the mode of the mysteries. This name is Abraxas in Latin and Abraxas in Greek. Such being the numeral value of the letters in Greek and Coptic, and therefore still earlier in Egyptian. Theophilus, bishop of Antioch, affirmed that Orpheus composed a poem of 365 gods, one for every day of the year. Justin Martyr puts the number at 360. Both are numbers of the year, and both show the phenomenal foundations in the time reckonings. The Gnostics, says Irenaeus, make out the local positions of 365 heavens. They hold that their chief is Abraxas, and on this account the word contains in itself the numbers amounting to 365. Lastly, the legends show that man was created in the likeness of the types belonging to the mythos at various stages of its evolution, and as, according to the Targum of Palestine, the Adamic man was created in the image of the Lord with 365 nerves. The divine image was the solar god of the complete year of 365 days or divisions described as nerves. That is, Adam was formed in the likeness of Atum Ra and of the Afra, the son of the 3 realms, the 6-fold division of heaven in the perfected year of solar time. And so this makes me think that the true image of man is not just man in one day, like in the moment. It's man over the course of a year, therefore the higher self, because again, Liber 365 is the bornless ritual, and it's all about, recognizing and reawakening the higher self. That is, Adam was formed in the likeness of Atum Ra and of the Afra, the son of the 3 realms, blah, blah, blah. This was not a primary, but almost the final creation. Here is another link with the Masonic Six, the great Sizor of the Irish Druids. Acacian is a title signifying a Mason, but not because acacia means innocence. The acacia, or Mimosa nilotica of Linnaeus, is the Masonic typical tree, the Nile name of which is Sas, Ses, or Seso wood, the same as the number 6 and the division of time by 6. The cube Sas or Was was squared in acacia wood, as well as stone on account of its hardness, as a figure of the sixfold foundation. In passing the veils in the Masonic mysteries, the candidate proceeds from the figure of 6, the double triangle, and at the figure of 9, the triple triangle, the word is communicated by the companions. The Masonic north is the void or abyss. It appears to me that their temple of the heavens ranges from the heavens of the 7 stars to that of the 7 planets. The Sanctum Sanctorum is a place of the 7, which are typified by the candlestick with 7 branches. Here the initiate is shown the Ark of the 7 and of the Covenant, the Ark to build, the Covenant to keep. It is the same Ark of the 7 as that of the 7 Rishis, the 7 Hogits, the 7 companions of Arthur, the 7 stars of the earliest circle, and covenant made in heaven. Synesius observes that the Egyptian Hierophants had comistea, which are arcs concealing, as they say, the spheres. The later planetary 7, and again planetary is 777 with a tau, are illustrated by the 7 steps and 7 degrees of ascent. There are 7 steps in the Scottish ritual of the degree called the Night of Kadash, the names of which are chiefly Hebrew. Also, the ladder of 7 rounds ascends the Red Room. Red being the color of the goddess Ma and of the nocturnal sun. Ne plus ultra is written at the foot of the ladder. This is considered the highest mystery. The staircase is also 999. It was the top of attainment in the relation to the later and superior Ogdoad of gods, consisting of the 7 planetary gods in their manifestor, the star 8-rayed of the Pleroma. Both systems are combined in the account given by Celsus, preserved by Origen, who says, "After this, Celsus, desiring to exhibit his learning in his treatise against us, quotes also certain Persian mysteries where he observes, these things are obscurely hinted at in the accounts of the Persians, and especially in the mysteries of Mithras, which are celebrated amongst them. For in the latter there is a representation of the 2 heavenly revolutions of this movement, viz. Of the fixed stars, of that which takes place among the planets, and of the passage of the soul through these. The representation is of the following nature. There is a ladder with lofty gates, and at the top of it an 8th gate. The first gate consists of lead, the second of tin, the third of copper, the 4th of iron, the 5th of a mixture of metals, the 6th of silver, and the 7th of gold. The first gate they assign to Saturn, indicating by the lead the slowness of this star, the second to Venus, comparing her to the splendor and softness of tin, the third to Jupiter, being firm and solid, the 4th to Mercury, for Mercury and iron are fit to enclose all things, and are money-making and laborious. The 5th to Mars, because being composed of a mixture of metals, it is varied and unequal. The 6th of silver to the moon, the 7th of gold to the sun, thus imitating the different colors of the 2 latter. He next proceeds to examine the reasons of the stars being arranged in this order, which is symbolized by the names of the rest of matter. Musical reasons, moreover, are added and quoted by the Persian theology, and to these, again, he strives to add a second explanation, connected also with musical considerations. There are data, then, in all the different creations and points of departure, which range from the motherhood of the 7 elementaries to the final fatherhood established on earth and in heaven, as it was under Atum Ra, or in the second Gnostic Hebdomad, which surrounds the Father, the planetary 7, represented by Iao Sabaoth. The development, changes, and readjustments can all be traced according to the data yet extant. This was preserved by the Gnostics, amongst others of those who knew, the men who were supposed, by the Christian idiotes, to be mere plagiarists and heretics that sprang up in the 2nd century of the present era. The Gnostics and Neoplatonists brought on the whole matter with the connecting links. They have the primary Ogdoad consisting of the Mother Sophia and the inferior Hebdomad, of the 7 elementaries who dwelt upon the Mount of Amsmen. This mother they, the Gnostics, also call Ogdoad, Sophia, Terra, Jerusalem, Holy Spirit, and, with a masculine reference, Lord. Proclus also says the goddess Rhea is a monad, duad, and heptad, comprehending in herself all the Titanidae. Valentinus maintained that the power of the 7 who gave life to this world, after the likeness of the first Hebdomad, was represented by Aratos, whose name is composed of 7 letters with 1 duplicate, to indicate the 7-fold nature of the One. Aratos, the 7-fold, answers to Sebti or Sut, Set, and Sevet, both of which names contain the number 7. There was a certain dyad or 2-fold being, he said, who is inexpressible by any name, of whom one part should be called Aratos, that is, ineffable, and the other Sige, or silence. This was the source of the Ogdoad. Page 81 of The Natural Genesis by Gerald Massey.
So I just want to point out that these references to Abraxas and obviously the Gematria of them is all over pretty much like Masonic literature, along with stuff about the Kabbalah. And so obviously the point is that a lot of this stuff is like a preservation of this ancient knowledge. And so like I have the old edition of Albert Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, and also the revised, somewhat newer one. And it also refers to magic and the magic squares, and so the geometry of these different qualities of nature associated pretty much with the planets, but also the archetypes, character typologies, and whatnot. But I found it interesting that basically when you subtract Abraxas from 666, obviously it's 301, which is the number of the moon in Greek as Selene or Selena. And Blavatsky on page 390 of volume 1, The Secret Doctrine, she pretty much talks about this whole mystery of the moon and the time cycles and its relation to man and evolution and generation. And I don't know, I think there's a lot to that. The fact that this knowledge is again contained in the cycles of time itself, and the geometry of the earth and the moon and the sun, obviously, I guess, too. So some books right here I pulled out. This is The Magical Calendar, and it is like an analysis of this pretty large document, which this isn't even how big it is. It's like very, very big, but it contains the natural magical sort of like geometry of the different planets and their correspondences. And then, so one of the more common grimoires is the Petit Albert, and it also has the hours, the planetary correspondences, and sort of like a sort of basic, almost primitive application of that sort of knowledge. And then, of course, the Rosicrucians, their Rites and Mysteries, has a lot of general knowledge, kind of like not quite as much as the Secret Doctrine, but still a lot. And then Neville Drury and Stephen Skinner's book, The Search for Abraxas. It's also kind of like a general primer that I was interested in trying to find, and I finally found it. And yeah, I just recommend all those books if you can ever find them, which I found these all like cheaper than they generally go for. There's just a lot of different wisdom within them.
The rectangle or square, triangle, and the circle or point are related to IAO and the Ogdoad by way of the fact, for one, they resemble the letters IAO, as obviously the elongated rectangle or just the even the phallic shape, the A being the triangle, which is the unfolding or the splitting or the opening, and then the O, which obviously fully encompasses the but the antithesis to the phallus and the opening. And so this whole thing is a sort of like generative word and idea. And the angles of the rectangle as 4, the triangle 3, and the circle or point as 1, the bindu, enumerates the Ogdoad. IAO has an HEG or Hebrew English Gematria value of Yod Aleph Ayin, so 81, which is 9, the serpent, cubed, but also the Ajna, or the Naja, which Naja is like Naga, but it's the Indian cobra, basically, so it's the snake, but it's also the eye. And so that right there is symbolic of pretty much the faculty of Abraxas, which, again, the Abraxas faculty is 444, which is middle pillar. See, and I did Sitsti, but Sitsti is just Lamed, so middle pillar. And 444 is obviously like a very grounding cross. It's like the cross of the elements. Elements. And so again, it's another sort of like unfolding of the elements into conscious like dimensionality. And 3-dimensional is 333, and another term for the 4th dimension is 4th density. And so these chambers represent sort of like, again, the unfoldment of this logic and consciousness itself into the morphogenetic and morphological field, like within and without, as consciousness and its contents. So the central eye, which in a sense acts as a microcosmic version of the prism of Thoth, being as it is the focal point of the inner vision, which first shows itself as a thin thread of light, which can unravel to reveal the mask of the fabric of what we consider reality. And it was funny, I just found 999 is also unwind the mortal coil with a gimel. So unwind the mortal coil, and it's like low basic form. 999 is everything to do with the toroid and the coil, the hyperdimensional matrix, just the serpent, pretty much the field. That's the symbolism of like the reptilian or draconian, the dragon and all that, and the serpent it's very simple. It's 9 in the 9 field, crystallizing into the 10, which is again like a Kabbalistic idea, and it's hard to comprehend, but it's really just simply the It's this like, how can you put it? Like, what's a better way to put it? I think of the calculator in just like the rim of uh, the so-called rings of Saturn, which obviously, yeah, there's planets beyond Saturn, but mythologically Saturn as like, you just think of the calculator as these fields, these rows, these cells, and the seed and ground, uh, the seed being 333 ground, and then the sun, and it's got a very like growth, like it's like you think of masonry as just like the blueprinting of the patterns of life. So I don't know. It's just eventually it becomes kind of like obvious, but it all sinks together and sinks in slowly over time. In its Greek valuation, IAO is 811, because Omega, Alpha, Iota, and a Tamura of Io, meaning to live, breathe, or know. 811 is also the light source, the Shekinah, being the holy dwelling or holy place of God. So again, this like the inhabiting light, i.e. manifestation. And since 811 combines the 8 and 11, which are both related to Doth, counting up from Malkuth and counting at last, it refers to the egg, which is 11, of 8 or infinity, i.e. the egg of Abraxas, which as a form of Rahur Kuit is ever coming. So again, yeah, it's this generative force, ever present. No, 800 or Omega itself is inside the egg, and the egg of everything. The prism, as well, pretty much of the serpent, which is centered in the epiphysis or third eye, through the alignment with Zin or Chin. In China, the word Zin or Chin, often translated as heart, is frequently used, and its concept is central to Chinese culture. However, its meaning is not exactly the same as heart in English. Using Qigong as the context, this article aims to explore the meaning of Zin or Qin as a cultural keyword in order to gain an in-depth understanding of Chinese culture and knowledge within that cultural system. Qigong is a Chinese health maintenance system and healing tradition which integrates physical activity with training of the mind and self-cultivation. One of Qigong's basic components is Qin adjustment. It is impossible to convey the full meaning of this concept without understanding the meaning of Qin. In Chinese culture, Qin is the root of physical and mental life. It is the seat of all emotions and embodies the inherent goodness of human nature and wisdom. Qin helps to guide the individual's way of life and attitude and can lead one to develop contentment. This is the alchemical process known as theurgy, which in the West is the central aim of the prominent Buddhist sect, that of Mahayana Buddhism. By creating the great or Maha vehicle or yana of awakening, which the egg, diamond, torus, or dodecahedron, etc., are all types of, though it is said that the Mahayana school is a much lengthier route to Atmavidya or self-knowledge than the Vajrayana school, which focuses primarily on the diamond body and the diamond realm. There is also Theravada, Navayana, and many other forms of Buddhism, which have their own unique perspective and all are very interesting and very useful for the chaos mage, experimentalists, or the like. Each path is essentially all one, which leads by way of silence out of the gross mundane world of matter and ego into the light world of what could be termed Lucifer consciousness. For when one realizes their inextricable unity between mind and matter, all is seen to be light or data, and the coiled serpent angel of light awakens in a way that can only be withstood for short periods, either as flashes or full-on raptures. but may also open wider in the dream state, which is itself composed purely of the light of consciousness. The Gnostic serpent wheel pictured above represents the 8 eons of Gnosticism. It is an emblem of the cycles of time and is a symbol of the Gnostic Messiah, the 8th eon who brings awakening and restores unity. It is closely related to the 8-spoked Catholic baptismal cross. The Sunday of the resurrection was for early Christians an 8th day, and symbolized regeneration. This cycle was represented for some Gnostics by the serpent, who was associated with the self-begotten deity by virtue of its ability to give birth to itself by the shedding of its skin. See Isis Unveiled, Volume 2, page 461, and The Rosicrucians, The Rites and Mysteries by Hargrave Jennings. Lamb is integral to these many different currents spanning the course of human history. In being enumerated as 71, Lamb is a form of the Kundalini, having stepped beyond the 7 eons into the 8th. Lamb is the mantra of the root chakra, the most dense, relating to the physical matter, which, as the mantra itself, serves to open or loosen for entry into the more subtle layers. The mask of Lamb, as given by Crowley, is thus the face or head of the Kundalini, generalized, of course, which has its reflection in Malkuth as Mal, the distiller and reviver of this core of ageless wisdom. Having been placed as the frontispiece to his commentated version of Blavatsky's The Voice of the Silence, a clue is given as to the nature of what this all means. For in the Gnostic text, the Discourse on the 8th and the 9th, which discusses in mystical terms the transition of the 8th to the 9th eonic ray, is done by a mode of singing in silence. Hermes' son soon had ecstatic experiences of his own, and his comments make clear that visionary experiences were located as experiences of the Ogdoad or 8th, while intellectual intuitions were located in the 9th. In the Hermetic system, a person who was having a vision had transcended his bodily senses and had, as such, ascended beyond the physical realm of the 7 planetary heavens. The Hermeticist's mind or self found itself in a condition of existence that was entirely literal, even though it was mental rather than bodily. Visionary experience was not a state of consciousness, but a state of being, a discrete rank or stage in the great chain of being. The 8th cosmic region was, in Corbin's 1972 sense of the term, an imaginal realm, with its own epistemic and ontic integrity. We might best approximate the Hermetic nuance in modern idiom by speaking not of an 8th celestial region, but of an 8th dimension. To go on to reach the 9th cosmic region, the imaginal realm of forms had itself to be transcended. Both meditations and mystical experiences had to be limited to intellectual abstractions. Trismegistus, let not my soul be deprived of the great divine vision, for everything is possible for you as master of the universe. Return to praising, my son, and sing while you are silent. Ask for what you want in silence. When he had finished praising, he shouted, Father Trismegistus, what shall I say? We have received this light, and I myself see this same vision in you, and I see the 8th in the souls that are in it, and the angels singing a hymn to the 9th and its powers, and I see him that has the power of them all, creating those that are in the Spirit, on the Discourse of the 8th and the 9th, 59 through 60. The assertion that he enters into the understanding of the 8th that reveals the 9th epitomizes this part of the mystical technique. Visualization practices were used to induce visions of images that had forms. The visualizations were known to be fabricated, but the visions that they triggered were thought to be unfabricated. These reflections on the visions were made during the visionary state, while in the company of the envisioned souls and angels. Due presumably to the vision's coherence or intelligibility, initiates postulated the reality of a mind that was responsible for ideas that took visionary form as images. The mind was not manifest to the initiate, but the images that manifested its ideas were. The text does not mention whether mind in this context was human or divine. Once the ninth had been postulated on the basis of the evidence of the eighth, the initiate was ready to move on to the ninth itself. The postulation of mind was to be used to induce a purely intelligible experience of the divine creator, of those that are in the spirit. Having perceived the intellectual necessity during visionary experience of postulating a mind beyond one's own, a hermetist was to accomplish a final ontological movement by proceeding from vision to union. The initiate or initiand was to verify the divinity of the human mind and its equivalence to divine mind by seeking an intellectual mystical experience. Corpus Hermeticum 13 described the experience as follows. This, my child, is rebirth, no longer picturing things in three bodily dimensions. Copenhagen, 1992, pages 88 through 89. See also Stages of Ascension and Hermetic Rebirth by Dan Mercure. Because Abraxas represents the cycle or circuit of the Earth year, it signifies revolution, which through time moves in a spiral fashion. The spiral is related to the cone and thus also the triangle of Abracadabra itself, which is said by many to be directly related to Abraxas. In an Encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its Kindred Sciences, Volume 1, by Albert Mackey, there is an entry on Abrac on page 6. Abrac, in the Leland manuscript, it is said that the Masons conceal the way of winning the faculty of Abrac. Mr. Locke, if it was he who wrote a commentary on the manuscript, says, "Here I am utterly in the dark. It means simply the way of acquiring the science of Abrac. The science of Abrac is the knowledge of the power and the use of the mystical Abraxas." Which, see, or very likely, Abrac is merely an abbreviation of Abracadabra. And on page 260 there is an entry on the faculty of Abrac as well. In the so-called Leland manuscript, it is said that the Masons conceal the way of winning the faculty of Abraxas. That is, that they conceal the method of acquiring the powers bestowed by a knowledge of the magical talisman that is called Abracadabra. In the Freemasons magazine from 1796, a whole section which mentions the Abrac or Abracadabra connection, referring to what also Mackey refers, which is the Leland manuscript, sometimes called the Locke manuscript, in consequence of the supposititious annotations appended to it by that metaphysician. See the Leland manuscript by Mackey. The Freemasons magazine, an explanation of the faculty of Abrac, see volume 3, page 82. To the editor. Sir, I was extremely delighted with the copy of that ancient and venerable manuscript concerning Freemasonry, with which you obliged to the public. Mr. Locke's notes and explanatory remarks do the paper great honor, and his declaration and the ladies' have contributed to increase the number of Masons in several lodges. There are, however, some passages so obscure that Mr. Locke himself knows not what to make of them. The way of winning the faculty of Abrac is one, which I shall endeavor to elucidate. I apprehend that by the faculty of Abrac is meant the chimerical virtues ascribed to the magical term Abracadabra, written or repeated in a particular manner. This fanciful charm is supposed to have been invented by the elder Serenus Samaniacus in the time of the emperors Severus and Caracalla, and was thought to be efficacious in curing plagues and preventing other diseases. The way of writing it was thus. So I don't know if I fucked up in typing this or what. A paper so inscribed was tied about the neck of the patient. It is the more probable that this may be the true explanation of the faculty of Abrac, because we see that the several of the mysteries of Masonry enumerated in this old piece are obscurely, imperfectly, or corruptly expressed. For instance, Peter Gower. Who would imagine that Peter Gower was Pythagoras in disguise? Yet how naturally and satisfactory is the corruption accounted for, by the medium which Mr. Locke has so happily discovered. Pythagoras seems to have been fated to transmigrations. The transmigration of Euphorbus into Pythagoras seems scarce more incredible than, at first sight, the transmigration of Pythagoras into Peter Gower. Another explanation of the above is to be seen in Mr. Hutchinson's Spirit of Masonry, page 33. There is also illustrations of Masonry by William Preston and George Oliver in pages 95 through 97, which says, Mr. Locke has made several judicious observations on the answer which is given to the question here proposed. His being in the dark concerning the meaning of the faculty of Abrac, I am not surprised at, nor can I conceive how he could otherwise be. Abrac is an abbreviation of the word abracadabra. In the days of ignorance and superstition, that word had a magical signification, but the explanation of it is now lost. Mr. Hutchinson, in his ingenious treatise entitled The Spirit of Masonry, gives the following explanation of the word abrac, which, as it is curious, I shall here insert in the gentleman's own words. Abrac, or Abracar, was a name which Basilides, a religious of the 2nd century, gave to God, who he said was the author of 365. The author of this superstition is said to have lived in the time of Adrian, and that it had its name after Abraxas or Abraxas, the denomination which Basilides gave to the deity. He called him the supreme god, and described to him the 7 subordinate powers or angels, who presided over the heavens, and also, according to the number of the days in the year, held that 365 virtues, powers, or intelligences existed as the emanations of God. The value or numerical distinction of the letters in the word, according to the ancient Greek numerals, made 365 as well. Among antiquaries, Abraxas is an antique gem or stone, with the word Abraxas engraved on it. There are a great many kinds of them, of various figures and sizes, mostly as old as the 3rd century. Persons professing the religious principles of Basilides wore this gem with great veneration as an amulet, from whose virtues and the protection of the deity to whom it was consecrated, and with whose name it was inscribed, the wearer derived health, prosperity, and safety. There is deposited in the British Museum such a gem, which is a bezel stone of the form of an egg. The head is in cameo, the reverse in intaglio. In church history, Abrax is noted as a mystical term, expressing the supreme god, under whom the Basilidians supposed 365 dependent deities. It was the principle of the Gnostic hierarchy, whence sprang their multitudes of things. From Abraxas is proceeded their primogenial mind. From the primogenial mind, the logos, or word. From the logos, the phronesis, Sophia, and dynamis, or wisdom and strength. From these 2 proceeded principalities, powers, and angels, and from these other angels to the number of 365. Who were supposed to have the government of so many celestial orbs committed to their care. So we can see that as far back as the 17 and 1800s, the faculty of Abrac, or Abraxas, was at least somewhat known about, though the Gnostic discourse mentioned above, the 8 reveals the 9th, as it is called here since its actual name is not fully given, was not discovered until 1945, the way of Abraxas. Reflecting on a newer level this year, when this was written, 2015, as the way of the Lama Serpent, or the Serpent Lama, or Serpent Lamb, 1111, and deciphered until 1947, the number of the secret has been revealed. The Ogdoadic and Enneadic traditions, however, go clear back to the Egyptian dynasties and span up to the present day with the Golden Dawn system, largely of the Septuagint 7, the Ordo-Astrum Solis of the Ogdoad 8, and the presently developing Enneadic revival on Malkuth, with the 9 Typhonian trilogies especially, imparted by Kenneth Grant, being a great foundational concentration and balance of the Horus and Set, and therefore Maotian energies of Thelema fused with the primary keys of many of the important systems of the world, and even tapping into the transplutonic or otherworldly gnosis, which is slowly becoming more of a reality with both technological as well as psychophilosophical advancements. The 9-pointed star is known to Masons as the symbol of the 33rd degree, and therefore it symbolizes the full flowering of the human soul. 33 being the two triangles forming the hexagram of the heart or chin, as well as the full tree of life, including the knowledge of Thoth with its full implications of the double tree, i.e. the double-headed phoenix or dragon, which is associated with Abraxas. The highest eon transcending time is 999, as well as the eon of Maat outside of time. The 8-pointed star is known as the Star of Elu, but it goes back to Sumeria, where it is known as the Dingir, which resembles the Chaos Magic Star, with the eye, which is 9, in the center, and the Chinese Bagua. There are 8 directions, including the in-between spaces of the cardinal directions, and 9 is 3 times 3, or the 3 dimensions projected into the grid field, which veils the 8 directions with the 9th central square opened in the fractal expansion. 8 and 9 together are 17, the supreme Kala, the 1 divided from the 7, or set with the phallus of Osiris, which is unified by Isis, giving 9. The totality waking up or being reborn in Malkuth with the rising of the sun. Again, the waking state. 17 is related to Osiris, who is also related to Orion, and there are 17 stars in Orion that are visible to the naked eye. 17 is specifically related to reincarnation or resurrection, because again, the 17th Kala of the crystallization from the elements. The light, 7, resurrected in Malkuth, 10, and 107, another amplification, or 17 with the egg, is the egg of Thoth, which recurs cyclically through time, and also the acausal principle, the nature of which is nearly unspeakable, though may be intuited if one goes around the cyclical path enough to recognize the nature of the fractal wheel of Abraxas, or the faculty of Abraxas. Note, using Greek, abrak, or abrak, equals 107, the primary number of the egg explored in this blog. And I just thought this picture was like really cool and fitting. I don't know who did it. Heaven and Hell, Dennis Constantin. The human form, the 5, 437, the number of Freemason. Also the 418, which is the computer. 418 is the value of Crowley's rendering of the abracadabra formula as abrahadabra, with had at the heart, which he wrote about extensively in various works. 418 is the number also of Aiwas in Greek, as well as Chit, pure consciousness. In his book to Freder Achad, Liber Aleph, the Book of Wisdom or Folly, Crowley veils certain things relating to abrahadabra. De hac formula considerationes Kabbalisticae. Behold, moreover, my son, the economy of this way, how it is according to the Tao, fulfilling itself wholly with thine own sphere, and it is utterly in tune with thine own will on every plane, so that every part of thy nature rejoiceth with every other part, communicating praise. Now then, learn also how this formula is that of the word abrahadabra. First, had is the triangle erect upon 2 squares. Of Hadit need I not to write, for he hath hidden himself in the book of the law. This substance is the Father, the instrument is the Son, and the metaphysical ecstasy is the Holy Ghost, whose name is Hrilyu. These are then the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, whose sacred letters are R, D, and B, Dabir, the word. But the last of the diverse letters is He, which in the tarot is the star, whose eidolon is D, or Daleth. And herein is that arcanum concerning the Tao of which I have already written. Of this will I not write more plainly, but mark this, that our Trinity is the path inwards in the solar system, and that He, being of Our Lady Nuit Starry, is an anchor to this magic, which else were apt to deny our wholeness of relation to the outer as to the inner. My son, ponder these words, and profit by them. For I have wrought cunningly to conceal or to reveal, according to thine intelligence, O my son. Crowley mentions something else that is odd in the wake world about 418 being a charioteer who is 19 years, which is odd because I turned 19 the year of my deeper initiation with the reception of the 107 egg in 2011, which was 102 years since Liber 14 was written in 1909, 102 being the number of Mayan the magician, also mentioned in that work, being also the future mage mentioned by Nema, and the one to carry on certain work mentioned in Liber 729, or the Amalantra working. Abrahadabra, which is a most mysterious word because it has 11 letters in it, the charioteer is a most curious person. He is a great big crab in the most lovely glittering armor, and he can just drive. His name is the mysterious name I told you. Nomen Yod He Vav Aleph 22. 22 times 19 is 418, Abrahadabra, about with 11 letters in it, but we call him Jehu for short, because he's only 19 years old. Note that 19 equals 184, which is a veil for Achad, Aleph, Cheth, Daleth. Achad, unity, the unity of 1 through 9, in the egg, which in simple gematria is 5 plus 7 plus 7, and a Temura of 418, both of which reduce to 13. 19 in its highest Hebrew-English gematria form with none final, and 700 is 1225 or 35 cubed, the double key, the key cubed or the key of the cube. 19 is said to be the secret code of God for a number of reasons, but spelled out as 1225, it is equivalent with the human logos of the 7 archons of the Pneuma Metras, or spirit matrix. And a lot of people don't like the word matrix because they think of the movie, which kind of ruined the all these concepts. But I don't know, it's just a mathematical term really, but it's also like the mother, which is Inas se Ola ta Ola se Ina, one in all in one of Achad's formulas for the universe. Note 19 is also the number of Eok, a form of IAO, and it's also Achad. 1225 is also the sum or triangular number of 1 through 49, 49 being 7 times 7, or light cubed, the fractal extension of the manifestation of light. Both 1225 and 19 reduce to unity, or 1. And so it is significant that it is also the value of a Hebrew title of Kether, the ancient of the ancient ones, Othika Dothakim, and a verse from the Bible, Exodus chapter 3, verse 15. This is my eternal name, and this is my memory from generation to generation. Thus being one with the Logos, all is known by the overmind of God, which is symbolized by the 1 in 10 and the 10 in 1, 1 in all in 1. In binary, 110-101 is 53, the number of both DMT and acacia, the holy wood of immortality used for the Ark of the Covenant, which contains DMT, a substance created by the pineal gland when one achieves the state of one in all in one. Note also that 5 times 3 is 15, an, the anya, or I. And 53 is also the degree of the angle of the Pythagorean triangle where Horus and Osiris meet. See Mayat and Masonry. 53 is also Abin, which is literally a combination of the Father, Ab, and the Son, Bin. The stone, which connects back to 184, which is also the Chintamani, the stone which Achad concerned himself with as the Ma'ayan. Ma'ayan as 171 is 13, Achad less than 184, but counting them all together as Ma'ayan, Abin, Chintamani, the number 408 is obtained, which is the sapphire stone itself, Abin HaSaphir. as the Ma'ayan, Aben, or stone Chintamani. And if you subtract Frater from 408, negative 13 Achad is obtained, as if to show that Frater Achad is right there beyond the O, or abyss, or inside the egg. The coming of Lamb's egg is also 418, the egg of Mu in Jewish Gematria. Certainly he was onto something with his calculations. He just happened to die 2 years later, after 1948 and 1950, and wasn't able to fully expand upon it. Kenneth Grant was the main person to carry this further, as well as a little bit of work done by various Mayatians, such as Berthaud, Greenfield, and others. But it really took a while to develop and gestate in an egg for a while, for things to really be able to be put in scope and developed by someone with the inner connections to these cyclically manifesting cosmic currents. I was 19 when I began this blog, and the egg was hatched in 2012, the year which the Mayans prophesied Kukulkan, another 102, would bring the serpent link to humanity at large. This has effectively been done, yet is still in its formative stages. And there's like more I wanted to say, but it so far hasn't come up to be able to really give all the data that I've wanted to. But like I said in the last video, I've been decoding serpent taxonomy and various species, and just the whole process of envenomation and anti-venom production. And it's funny because the first guy to create an anti-venom was Albert Calmette, who was a student of Louis Pasteur. But Calmette is 107, which is the vaccine. He created it from cobra venom. And 107, it's just all this fucking egg. It's clearly the serpent egg. The egg of the serpent knowledge. But 666 is as well, and all the chamber numbers, when you really study or break them all down into those, it's too fucking much. But I guess what it really comes down to is, really the caduceus. Well, I guess with a gimel, the caduceus is 107 as well. And that's obviously the tool of Asclepius as well as Hermes. Hermes happens to be 555, which is also master. So it's funny, he's the master of the universe. And, but then, what is it? Hold on. C-A-D-U-C with the cheth. Caduceus is 333, which has a lot to do with more serpent stuff, okay, well, I'll just go into it. It's the rattles, as well as the stillness. Two of the main defense mechanisms. Even other snakes that aren't rattlesnakes, they rattle their tail in defense, especially rat snakes. But so that's significant because 333, all these triple numbers have a lot to do with vibration, and obviously cymatics, 777, and that's the flaming sword, but also the knowledge of the serpent and the Sabbath itself, Ha-Shabbat. So, what am I trying to say? 999 is the supreme serpent number, and it's, what is it? All this stuff about fucking serpents. It's the Mojave rattlesnake as its actual name, Crotalus scutulatus. The last one being Shin, Crotalus scutulatus. or Scutellatus. And that's the most poisonous rattlesnake. And I don't know, I've just focused on the rattlesnake because it seems to be the more like advanced in terms of evolution and stuff. They say it's like one of the most evolved. It's weird how rattlesnakes seem, like Native American-y, and like cobras seem Indian. It's just weird to me. Someone's probably going to think that's racist or something. But no, I just think that it's weird. Like these snakes and animals, even plants, like bamboo seems Asian. Pine trees seem American. It's just, it's obvious, I guess, but it's just funny. Because people, the way in which people then like model their cultures around things, I think that Terence McKenna has there's a lot of truth to what he says about how plants in the surroundings especially, but plants influence culture. What was I going to say? Certainly he was onto something with his calculations, blah, blah, blah. Kenneth Grant reformulates abrahadabra and Beyond the Mauve Zone as abracadabra, using a chod in the center, exchanging he for cheth, making a chod unity central to the formula instead of had, bringing the total value up from 418 to 421, the value of the egg, which re-manifested as a reincarnation of Iwas precisely on April 2nd, 2011, carrying on the work of the egg, which is also 421 using teth instead of tau. This also makes the formula more consistent with its ancient relations to Abraxas. Returning to the subject at hand, the formula of Abrac using cheth is 212, the number of the boiling point in degrees Fahrenheit, the boiling water degree, as well as 0-point energy. 212 is the value of Zer or Zohar, the Hebrew form of Zohar, which means splendor or radiance. The same title is the 8th Sephirah Had associated with Abraxas, the radiance from the 0 point, the key of magic or the magical faculty. 212 times 11, odd, the magic power, is 2332, which happens to be the sum of the triangle of abracadabra in Hebrew English Gematria. The faculty of Abraxas is 911, a number which has been stigmatized like 666 and associated with negativity such as the police and the events of September 11th and the aftermath of all that. However, it is a number of power, being that of the 0 point, which is active when it is the pointed 0 from the solar alpha omega form between the 9 and the 11. 911 is also the formula of lam ipsos, or ipsos lam, with mem final, mentioned by Grant in Outside the Circles of Time as the Maoshan formula for evoking lam. 10 being Malkuth, Muladhara, or Lam, which is a mask of the 0 point. 911 is also the secret word which I have given unto him, that word being Ma-Ion, which with none final as 700 is 821, which is 90 less than 911, and therefore the Lam Ma-Ion is 911. 821 being the Gematria codes of the child of Liber AL. Most importantly, however, 911 is axon, wheel, axis, or pole. The axis or axle being the center of the torus and therefore the heart of Abraxas. The omphalos, or center, from which is drawn the akmon, meteoric stone, or thunderbolt, i.e., the magical creative power of the divine light. In the course of writing this post, I had a dream just last night where I was doing a banishing ritual in an astral ritual chamber, levitating, as I do very often in my dreams, above and surrounded by an empty vacuum of space. This is the timeless realm of the egg of Abraxas, which is coterminous with the Ma-Ion, the astral Kurla cell beyond space-time, which is developed and empowered as the fractal diamond light rainbow body of Kophnia, or the backwards eye. After remembering I had this dream today, I calculated simply the banishing ritual in a dream. And just like many things that come to me, almost like transmissions from the genius mind, the higher mind, the received phrase has a value of 777, or 777. 777 being the light world of the 7 rays, it is also the astral sea of the astral plane dreams, of the astral light, each of which are like bubbles of Azathoth, as what Crowley called aggregates of experience. The ability to awaken in this way is the faculty of Abraxas, for it is the aligning with the higher self. And again, the higher power is 999. And having calculated many Buddhist things and finding many things that equal 777, it is significant to see it's also the Vajrayana sight, obviously the clear sight, or the sight of the clear vehicle of the astral body, obviously, or the Dharmakaya, of the 7 primal rays of the phoenix light, the reincarnating or recreative eternal light. The generation of the power of Abraxas can be done with the method given in the Chinese Book of Light, as expanded upon by Wilhelm and Jung in The Secret of the Golden Flower, which gives the method of the circulation of light to create the golden elixir of Qin or Zin. Zin or Qin is 800, because it's Zadi 90 plus Yod 10 plus Nun Final 700, and is secreted from the gland being 888, the 19 would be imply 107 as the gland, implying mainly the pineal gland, but also in general. The Zin gland is 888, because obviously 800 plus 88 is specifically related to the circulation and the light. The golden flower which blossoms as a result of this is 889, the invisible jewel, or the holy guardian angel, the one in the midst of the 8th Gnostic eon. Adding Om to the golden flower, which is unfolded by its utterance, Om being 70 plus 40, gives 999, the higher power of the highest unity uttermost showed, of the gold Tao egg, obviously the Tao manifested as the egg of Brahma, of the perfect Mani stone, which arrived to me on April 2nd, 2011, as a talismanic manifestation of my having aligned with the current of Mayat, the perfect ion, on September 9th, 2009, successfully channeling the supreme knowledge without my conscious awareness at the time. Which I kind of knew. I knew there was something to 999, but the contents of it hadn't, emerged. More of this knowledge will be disseminated as it is more properly integrated, and much more is to be published soon, expanding on many more different routes of analysis using this frame of context.